When you hear the phrase, the Fed is printing money, what do you picture? Is it this? A giant industrial machine deep in a Washington, D.C. vault, humming day and night, churning out trillions of new dollar bills. This is the popular image. It's what we see in movies. It's what we hear in the news. It's simple, it's tangible, and it's what most people believe. But it's almost entirely wrong. The truth is, the Federal Reserve rarely prints physical cash. That job actually belongs to the U.S. Treasury's Bureau of Engraving and Printing. The Fed's real power is far more abstract, far more complex, and infinitely more powerful. The real mechanism of money creation doesn't use ink and paper. It's built almost entirely on debt. What you are about to learn will fundamentally change how you see the entire economy, how you view your bank account, and why the prices for houses and stocks seem to climb relentlessly higher. This is how the Fed really prints money. Welcome to Finance Prism, where we make complex finance clear. To understand how money is created, you first have to understand what money actually is in the modern U.S. economy. Most of the money in circulation isn't this. It's this. It's digital entries in a bank's computer. It's the number in your checking account, your savings account, and in corporate accounts. It's just data. And the primary printers of this digital money are not the Federal Reserve. They are the thousands of commercial banks you see every day. J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of America, and even your local credit union. They perform this magic trick through a process that's been around for centuries, called Fractional Reserve Banking. Here's how it works, step by step. Let's say Jane deposits $100 in cash into Bank A. Now the bank doesn't just put that $100 in a vault with Jane's name on it. By law, it only has to keep a fraction of it on hand. This is called the reserve requirement. Historically, this has been around 10%. So Bank A keeps $10 in its vault, just in case Jane comes back for it. But what about the other $90? The bank sees that as an asset it can use. It can now loan out that $90. So Bank A loans $90 to Tom, who wants to buy some new software. Tom pays Sarah for the software. Sarah takes that $90 and deposits it into her bank, Bank B. Now what does Bank B do? The exact same thing. It sees a $90 deposit. It keeps 10% in reserve, which is $9, and loans out the other $81. This cycle repeats again and again and again. That $81 is then spent and deposited into Bank C. Bank C keeps $8.10 and loans out $72.90, and so on and so on. Let's stop and look at what just happened. This is the most important part. How much money is in the economy now? Jane thinks she has $100 in her account. Sarah thinks she has $90 in her account. Maria thinks she has $81. Jane's original $100 deposit has now created $900 of brand new digital money in the economy. This new money appeared out of thin air. It wasn't printed, it was loaned into existence. This money multiplier effect is the primary engine of economic growth. It's how our economy expands. Now, here is a critical update. You might be thinking, okay, but they still have to keep 10%. Not anymore. In March of 2020, in response to the pandemic, the Federal Reserve did something unprecedented. It reduced the reserve requirement for all U.S. banks to 0%. That's right, 0. Theoretically, banks no longer need to hold any of your deposits in reserve. They can lend out 100% of it. Now, in practice, banks still hold reserves for safety and regulatory reasons, but the guardrails, the brakes on the system, have essentially been removed. Now, your first question should be, if banks can theoretically create an unlimited amount of money from loans every single day, why aren't we all swimming in cash? Why doesn't that cause immediate runaway hyperinflation? Because this entire system has a boss, a regulator. The banks may be the printing press, but the Federal Reserve is the one who controls the price of the ink. And that boss is the Federal Reserve. Think of the Federal Reserve as the climate control system for the entire US economy. Its main job isn't to create money itself, but to control the cost of money. It does this by setting a target for a very important interest rate. You hear it on the news all the time, the federal funds rate. This is the interest rate banks charge each other for overnight loans to meet those reserve requirements we just talked about. But you can just think of it as the base cost of money for the entire financial system. And this rate dictates everything else. When the Fed wants to cool down the economy, usually to fight inflation, it raises rates. This is called tightening. It makes it more expensive for banks to lend, so they, in turn, charge you more. Your mortgage rate goes up. Your car loan gets more expensive. Your credit card APR skyrockets. Suddenly, Tom decides not to borrow that $90. The money multiplier machine grinds to a halt. Less money is created. The economy cools off. When the Fed wants to stimulate the economy, like during a recession, it cuts rates. This is called easing. It makes it cheaper for banks to lend. Your mortgage rate drops. Banks offer 0% financing on cars. Tom, Sarah, and Maria all start borrowing again. The money multiplier machine kicks back into high gear. More money is created. The economy heats up. For decades, this was the Fed's primary tool. A gentle hand on the thermostat, just trying to keep the economic room at a comfortable temperature. But then, 2008 happened. In 2008, the global financial system was in a complete meltdown. The Fed cut interest rates all the way to zero, but it wasn't enough. The system was broken. Banks were terrified to lend, no matter how cheap it was. This is a classic liquidity trap. You're trying to push on a string. The economy was collapsing. The Fed needed a bigger, more powerful tool. It needed a financial defibrillator. Enter quantitative easing, or QE. This is the real money printing everyone talks about. And it's not for Main Street. It's for Wall Street. Here's how it works. The Fed doesn't call a printing press. It just opens its own digital checkbook. Step 1. The Fed digitally creates money on its own balance sheet. Money that did not exist 1 second before. Step 2. It uses this brand new digitally created money to buy assets, billions and billions of dollars worth of treasury bonds and mortgage-backed securities directly from the commercial banks. Step 3. The banks are now suddenly flooded with new, fresh cash, or reserves. They don't want to just sit on this cash. They have to lend it out to make a profit. This massive direct injection of new money pushes borrowing costs down across the entire economy and forces banks to start that fractional reserve lending cycle all over again. Between 2008 and 2014, the Fed did this 3 times. Its balance sheet ballooned from less than $1 trillion to over $4.5 trillion. Then in 2020, when the pandemic hit, it did it again on an even more massive scale. It added another $4 trillion in less than 2 years. That is how the Fed prints money. It doesn't use a machine. It uses a keyboard to buy debt. So the Fed digitally creates trillions of dollars and gives it to the banks, hoping they'll lend it out to Main Street to build factories and create jobs. But where does that money actually go? Does it go into your paycheck? Does it help you buy groceries? Mostly, no. Banks find it safer and more profitable to lend that money to large corporations, hedge funds, and private equity firms. Those corporations don't use it to build factories. They use it to buy back their own stock. Hedge funds use it to speculate. Private equity uses it to buy up companies. That new money flows directly and almost exclusively into financial assets, the stock market, the housing market, and yes, it is the primary fuel for massive speculative bubbles, just like the AI bubble we're seeing right now. This system of creating money from debt, supercharged by quantitative easing, saved the economy from collapse. But it comes at a tremendous hidden cost. It creates inflation, but not just the inflation you see at the grocery store. That's consumer price inflation, and the Fed watches that one closely. It creates massive, unchecked asset inflation. Look at the data. Since 2009, the stock market has more than quadrupled. The median U.S. home price has more than doubled. Meanwhile, median wages, they've barely kept up with official consumer inflation and have fallen far behind the cost of assets. This is the great divergence. The Fed's actions make those who own assets, stocks, houses, and investments exponentially richer. But if you are someone who only earns a salary, your purchasing power stagnates. You are being left behind. The house your parents bought for 3 times their annual salary now costs you 7 or 8 times your salary. The game becomes rigged. It's no longer just about earning a living. It's about owning assets that can ride the wave of new money the Fed and the banks are creating. And that brings us to the present. When the Fed printed trillions in 2020, that money found its way into everything from lumber to used cars to cryptocurrency, and yes, to Nvidia, fueling the AI arms race. Understanding this system, that money is debt, that the Fed controls the cost of that debt, and that QE injects money directly into financial assets, is the first and most critical step to navigating the economy we actually live in. It's not a conspiracy, it's just mechanics. If making these complex financial systems clear and simple is valuable to you, this is what we do at Finance Prism. Take a moment to subscribe for more explainers just like this one. So the next time you hear that the Fed is printing money, you'll know the truth. They aren't running a printing press. They are managing a massive global system of debt. When they want to slow the economy, they make debt more expensive. When they want to speed it up, they make debt cheaper. And when they get desperate, they digitally create money to buy debt from banks, flooding the system with liquidity that finds its way into the assets you're trying to save up to buy. In our modern economy, for better or for worse, debt is money. Understanding this one difference is the key to protecting your own.